I was walking home after visiting a family member late at night. It was dark and quiet, and I was the only one on the road. I was listening to music on my phone, but I could still hear the sound of my own footsteps echoing in the silence. As I was walking, I saw a white figure standing next to the street. It was tall and slender, and it was wearing a long white robe. I couldn't see its face, but it felt like it was watching me. I felt uneasy, and my adrenaline started to kick in. I decided to start walking faster. As I passed the figure, I turned slightly to look at it. To my horror, I saw that it was chasing me. I started to run, and the figure chased after me. I could hear its footsteps getting closer and closer. I was terrified, and I screamed for help. The dogs in the neighborhood started to bark, and people started to come out of their houses. The figure stopped chasing me and disappeared into the night. I was shaken up from the experience, but I was unharmed. I went home and told my family what had happened. They didn't believe me at first, but they could see the fear in my eyes. I never saw the figure again, but I still think about it sometimes. I don't know what it was, but it was definitely something evil. I'm grateful to the dogs and the people in the neighborhood for helping me. If it wasn't for them, I don't know what would have happened to me. I was out on the open water, surrounded by the vast expanse of the ocean. The sun was high in the sky, casting shimmering rays across the surface of the water. It was a perfect day for some deep-sea diving, or so I thought. As I descended into the depths, the water gradually grew darker and colder. I adjusted my goggles and checked my oxygen tank, making sure everything was in order. I was excited to explore the underwater world and maybe even catch a glimpse of some majestic marine creatures. I had been swimming for a while, marveling at the vibrant coral reefs and the colorful fish that darted in and out of the crevices. Everything seemed serene and peaceful, until suddenly the water around me grew eerily still. I felt a shiver run down my spine, an inexplicable sense of unease settling in the pit of my stomach. And then I saw it, a shadowy figure lurking in the distance. At first I couldn't make out what it was, but as it came closer, my heart started pounding in my chest. It was a shark, a massive predatory shark. My mind raced as I remembered all the documentaries I had seen about these apex predators. I knew that some species of sharks were dangerous, but I also knew that they rarely attacked humans intentionally. Still, fear gripped me as I watched the shark circle around me, its cold black eyes fixed on me. I tried to control my breathing, reminding myself to stay calm. I slowly began to ascend, hoping that the shark would lose interest and swim away. But it didn't. It stayed right beside me, its presence a menacing reminder that I was in its territory. As I reached the surface, I let out a shaky breath. I glanced around, hoping to see the boat that had brought me out here, but it was nowhere in sight. Panic began to set in as I realized how far I had drifted from safety. I treaded water, keeping my eyes on the shark that still circled below. It seemed curious, almost as if it was studying me. Every time I moved, it followed, never straying too far. The minutes felt like hours as I tried to come up with a plan. I couldn't outswim a shark. That much I knew. Suddenly, a memory flashed in my mind. I recalled hearing that sharks had sensitive noses, and that a well-placed punch to the snout could potentially deter them. Gathering all the courage I had left, I took a deep breath and dove back underwater. The shark was right there, its sleek body gliding effortlessly through the water. I positioned myself as best as I could and thrust my fist forward, striking it on the nose. The impact sent shock waves through my hand, but the shark veered away, its movements disoriented. I didn't waste any time. I kicked as hard as I could, propelling myself toward the surface. My heart pounded in my ears as I broke through the water, gasping for air. I swam with every ounce of strength I had left, heading in what I hoped was the direction of the boat. My muscles screamed in protest, but adrenaline pushed me forward. And then, like a miracle, I saw the boat in the distance. I shouted and waved my arms, hoping the crew would see me. It felt like an eternity, but they finally spotted me and rushed over to pull me out of the water. I collapsed onto the deck, a mixture of relief and exhaustion washing over me. I looked back at the water, half expecting to see the shark still lurking there, but it was gone. The vast ocean had swallowed it up, leaving me with a chilling memory of that near-death encounter. As the boat made its way back to shore, I couldn't shake the feeling of awe and humility. I had come face to face with one of the ocean's most feared predators and lived to tell the tale. The experience had given me a newfound respect for the power and majesty of the underwater world, a world that I would never underestimate again. The scariest thing that has happened to me while camping. So I live in Eastern Oregon, and my mom lives in Western Oregon. I went to visit her for the summer, and she's very outdoorsy, so we decided to take the 1-hour drive from her city to the coast. We end up at this free campsite at the top of this hill. Huge foothills of the coastal mountains, about a 25-minute drive from the top where the campsite is to the bottom where the main road was. And we were the only campers there. We relaxed for the rest of the day, made food, etc. A truck full of men drive up the hill and talk with my mom. Wasn't suspicious at the time, and they left us. Fast forward to the middle of the night. I woke up to my mom sitting straight up in the tent. I wake easily, so I heard her gasp, and it woke me. As soon as she saw I was awakened, she put her hand over my mouth because I was starting to ask her what's wrong. It was dead silent, and all of a sudden we heard footsteps right beside the tent. The little flap that covers the zipper was even moving. Thankfully, my mom has quick wits and said very loudly, "Kenny, grab the gun." Kenny is my dad, and mind you, he was not there. Just us girls, like I previously said. They left. No harm was done. Thank the Lord for my mama. Ouija board knocks back. In high school, my friends and I were messing around with a Ouija board one night. We had done it before, and nothing remarkable had ever happened. We usually did it to try and scare each other or our girlfriends. We all thought it was a joke. That night, there was no one else home except the 7 of us, and we were all together around the board. One of the girls there wanted to try it. She had never done it before. This time was different. The board misspelled some of the words the same way every time. It gave answers that seemed really historically accurate for our town, things we neither knew or cared about. Long story short, the spirit claimed it was a 10-year-old boy who had died on the property in the 1800s and was buried there too in an unmarked grave. My friend's house was on a farm in the edge of town. We were all a little freaked out because the board had never been so detailed and consistent. However, we were still skeptical, and we were all assuming one of us was trying to scare the rest. Finally, my friend asked if the spirit could do something to prove he was there with us. It went to yes and then spelled out K-N-O-C-K. Then the planchette stopped moving. We just all stared at it silently. And then there was a rap, rap, rap on the window right next to us. The lights were on outside, and there was absolutely no one out there. We never touched that effing board again. Forgotten memory. Growing up, my bedroom was the only one that faced the front of the house street. When I was about 8 or 9, I woke up to my dad calmly but firmly telling me to get up, go in the bathroom, and shut the door. I was annoyed because I was half asleep, but I listened. Apparently, I was more tired than I realized because I feel asleep on the bathroom floor. The next morning, I asked my mom what happened. She seemed oblivious and confused. I looked at my dad like she was crazy, and I asked him why he had woken me up. He denied doing it. I was becoming frustrated to the point of tears, but I ultimately let it go. Fast forward to college. I was home one break, and I decided to ask again. I had thought of that night off and on for years, and it still bothered me. This time my dad goes, "Ha, I was wondering if you even remembered that." Turns out that a lot of houses on our block were being vandalized and robbed all those years ago. Someone had broken into the garage and was inside the house. My room was partially over the garage. My dad heard it happen and quietly got me to safety. Police were called. The guy ran. He was never caught, however, and my parents didn't want a terrified kid on their hands. So for years they pretended like nothing had ever happened. It wasn't supernatural, but it was unsettling for sure. In the midst of my destitution in Nigeria, I yearned for a better life abroad. But my finances were meager, so I scrimped and saved, collecting meager provisions. Word had spread that many embarked on treacherous desert journeys to reach Europe. Armed with a map and determination, days turned into weeks, which morphed into months as I traversed diverse landscapes. Eventually, I found myself in Libya, traveling with fellow hopefuls towards the European dream. Our bus came to a halt, and a distant car signaled trouble with its swirling dust. Instinctively, we sensed malevolent intentions, urging us to flee towards the bus. Yet the driver feigned a mechanical issue, a prelude to a horrifying ambush. As panic surged, I turned to prayer, a desperate plea for salvation. Approaching us were 5 individuals shrouded in scarves, their faces concealed. These ominous figures, armed with AK-47s, boarded our bus demanding money. We, 20 passengers, including the driver, were at their mercy. Suspicion grew as it became evident the driver was complicit, luring us into this trap. The robbers confronted the first 5 passengers, demanding payment. One man's poverty became his death sentence, the trigger pull ending his life. Terror paralyzed us, leaving one passenger in the throes of involuntary urination. Amongst us were also 5 women seized and herded into the robbers' vehicles. The ordeal of robbery was punctuated by gunfire, marking the bus driver's demise when he dared to claim his share. 2 days later, another bus arrived, and we were nearly bereft of sustenance. Informed of the harrowing events that transpired, the newcomers advised us to retrace our steps rather than push onward. Hungry and parched, we embarked on a return journey, scattered across various buses, bound for different countries. Through these tribulations, the value of life's blessings became starkly clear. Gratitude for even the smallest joys blossomed within me. The experience underscored the need for patience, resilience, and a sense of gratitude in the face of adversity. I was living in Jonesboro, Arkansas at the time, and my life seemed to take an unsettling turn when I began dating a guy named Jason. Everything started off fine, but as time went on, I began to notice disturbing behaviors in him. He would become possessive, jealous, and his temper would flare up over the smallest things. Eventually, I decided to break things off and move on. After ending things with Jason, I started seeing someone new, Mark. He was everything I could have hoped for. Caring, understanding, and respectful. However, it seemed that my past with Jason wasn't ready to let go. He began stalking me and my new boyfriend, showing up unexpectedly and sending creepy messages. It was unnerving, to say the least. One evening, when I returned home from work, my heart sank as I saw a chilling sight. There, on my doorstep, was a letter written in blood. My name, Emily, was scrawled across it, and the message simply read, "I miss you." The fear that had been building up inside me escalated to an entirely new level. My hands trembled as I unlocked the door and entered my house. Upon entering my bedroom, a horrifying scene unfolded before me. An axe and a box of chocolates were laid out on my bed. The juxtaposition of these items was eerie and disturbing. As I turned around, hoping to flee from this nightmare, I was met with Jason's haunting presence. His face twisted into a creepy smile. He uttered the words, "Happy Valentine's." My heart raced as he grabbed my arms with a vice-like grip. Panic surged through me, but a surge of adrenaline allowed me to react. With all the strength I could muster, I kicked him square in the groin. A guttural scream escaped his lips as he doubled over in agony. It was a moment of triumph amidst the terror. Seizing my chance, I managed to break free from his grasp. My instincts kicked in, and I dashed for the door. As I fled down the hallway, I could feel his presence behind me. Turning the corner, I reached for my phone and dialed 911, the sounds of my own heavy breathing filling my ears. The police arrived promptly, their flashing lights casting an eerie glow over the scene. Jason was apprehended, his twisted smile now replaced by a look of rage and defeat. He was charged with trespassing, and finally, I felt a glimmer of relief. But that relief was short-lived. Years later, a chilling headline graced the news. Jason, the man who had tormented my life, was now facing charges for the murder of an elderly individual at a local bar. The shock of seeing his face on the television screen once again sent shivers down my spine. The darkness within him had escalated to an unimaginable level. As the legal proceedings unfolded, Jason was ultimately sentenced to prison. The mere thought of his presence behind bars brought a strange sense of closure. However, my unease persisted, especially as news surfaced that he had been transferred to a high-security correctional facility. The knowledge that he was still out there, even behind bars, was a constant source of anxiety. Looking back on that incident, I'm reminded of the fragility of life and the unpredictable turns it can take. The scars left by Jason's actions remain, a constant reminder of the terror I endured. But in the midst of the darkness, I found strength within myself, and the unwavering support of loved ones helped me move forward, step by step, toward a brighter and safer future.
Miguel, a janitor at a high school in Ecuador, was cleaning the building one late night. As he worked his way down the deserted hallways, an unsettling feeling crept in. Eerie sounds echoed through the emptiness, making him jump at every creak and groan. Curiosity, tinged with trepidation, led him to investigate a particularly loud noise coming from one of the classrooms. With a deep breath, Miguel pushed open the creaky door. A blood-curdling sight awaited him. In the dim light, a woman stood, with her head tucked grotesquely under her arm. Terror coursed through him. He flung his mop across the room and bolted out of the classroom, his heart hammering in his chest. He sprinted out of the school, adrenaline pumping through his veins. He didn't dare look back until he reached his bicycle. Mounting it, he pedaled furiously, glancing back every few seconds. In the distance, under the sparse streetlights, he swore he could see the figure chasing him. Panic fueled his speed. He pushed himself to the limit, the deserted streets blurring past him. Finally, he spotted a house with welcoming lights. Without a second thought, he flung his bike down and pounded on the door, screaming for help. A young man in his 20s, startled awake, answered the door, shotgun in hand. His father, a man in his 50s, emerged soon after. Miguel, babbling incoherently, blurted out his terrifying experience at the school. The kind family ushered him inside, calming him down and assuring him he was safe. Exhausted and shaken, Miguel spent the night at their home. In the light of day, Miguel rode back home, his encounter fresh in his mind. He recounted the whole story to his wife, and they both agreed on one thing. He wouldn't be going back to that school as a janitor. This story serves as a reminder. Always ask questions, and do your research before accepting a job, especially one in an unfamiliar place with a history you don't know. You never know what you might encounter in the dark. Thanks for joining us on Fright Scream. Remember, for more chills, subscribe and hit that notification bell. Until next time, sleep tight if you dare.